Okay. Welcome to everyone that has just joined. Thank you for joining this morning. So just a quick introduction about career leadership and who I am. I'm Danielle. I'm the Senior Career Officer at Career Leadership at Stellenbosch Business School. And our purpose is to help our students and alumni kind of navigate their career journeys, not only as postgraduate talent, but also as experienced talent in the working world. So today we've partnered with Gradlinc, a company actually incubated at Stellenbosch University, very proudly so. And they actually assist employers with filling the talent gap by using their unique algorithm to actually match their requirements with the skills of talent on their platform. So Gradlinc is actually available to use for students at Stellenbosch Business School as well. So if you haven't joined Gradlinc yet, please go and have a look after this. We'll send you some information about Gradlinc as well that will assist you in kind of learning about the platform and learning about what they do. So I think it would be really cool if everyone who has joined actually just introduces themselves using the chat, if you are able to. Just tell us your name and like where, what your expertise is so that we can kind of facilitate discussion throughout. And it's also just good, on a virtual environment to know who it is that's in the room. So with us today, hosting this presentation from Gradlinc's point of view, is Priya and Lizanne. Priya will be doing most of the talking, and Lizanne will join us throughout. But you would be very excited to hear that Priya and Lizanne are actually MBA graduates at Stellenbosch Business School. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for joining us. So I think the fact that they are MBA grads from the business school means that they know a lot about your journeys and your perspective. Both of them have actually done career transitions moving over to Gradlinc. Priya's got a law background and Lizanne has a background in nursing in the healthcare industry. So this is all very interesting. And I think that their journeys actually model a lot of the journeys of our talents. So I would say use this opportunity this morning to ask them questions about, not only their journeys, but the topic as well, which is about deconstructing the HR mindset and really getting to know a bit more about what it is that you can do as a skilled candidate to choose which jobs you're applying for. You don't want to waste your time as a skilled candidate. And a lot of times, you have to actually filter out bad job specifications as well. And you know how the job search process goes. It's time consuming. You have to adapt your CV for every job application that you do. So this webinar is really dedicated to just the candidate's perspective in the job search and helping you kind of realize that there are certain things you can look at on a job specification to not only tap into the HR mindset, but also to prepare yourself for an interview by using the job spec as your first tool to get to know about what type of job you're applying for and what type of company it is that you'll be joining. So for those who joined a bit late, please add your introduction to the chat, but also along with your introduction about who you are, please tell us what it is about job specifications that annoy you. So if you've been in through the job search process, either recently or in the past, think about what it was about a job specification that you find or found particularly annoying. If there was anything, if you love a job spec, please tell us why and what was good about those job specifications. Because generally we find that it is quite time consuming to go through a job spec and to decide, is this opportunity for me? So we want to know from you, what is it about a job spec that annoys you, tends to irritate you, or that you don't like, or that you wish was better? So tell us in the chat and we'll address that either at the end or in the early stages as we go, but it will facilitate our conversation that we'll have. So Priya, over to you.
Morning, Danielle. Thank you very much. And thanks for everyone who's joined the session this morning. I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with you. Okay, so Danielle, you pretty much did a fantastic job of the introduction, so I don't need to say anything more about myself. So I'm just going to get straight into it, and I encourage questions as we go along. Let's keep this as interactive as possible. The sole purpose of Lizanne and I being here this morning is to help you. You're going through this whole process with your studies, and we hope that you get a lot out of this. So, this is Gradlinc, like Danielle said. We're a very colorful little startup. So the purpose of this morning is basically to deconstruct a job specification, and the angle that we're looking at it from is from the human resource mindset. So the human resource mindset in this instance is basically the individual in the human resource department who is going to be viewing or reviewing you as an individual for a job, and who almost 100% of the time has written the job specification, which you have found on some kind of platform. All right, so we use all these words: deconstructing, a job specification, human resource mindset, but what does this really mean? So in the environment that we're living in, which I'm going to speak a little bit about some statistics now, as a candidate, you are no longer, sort of operating in an atmosphere where it's just, I have this particular qualification and therefore I'm automatically at the top of the food chain for whatever kind of new role that you're looking for. So now, while we were working on this presentation, we obviously did a little bit of research, and I found this article online from Business Tech. And to give you some sort of perspective, we all know that unemployment in South Africa is a huge problem, but if we just look at it from a retrenchment perspective, in 2019, retrenchment as a source of unemployment was at 2.3%. And then we fast forward to 2022 and we're looking at 14.5%. Okay. So, okay, well, this speaks a lot, but what's basically happening is, we're recovering from a period of COVID, yes, but specific to South Africa also, we have an energy crisis going on in South Africa, which we're all very familiar with. So companies are trying to sort of handle the situation, and what they're doing is their HR departments are essentially becoming an HR individual. So you have a scenario where you have, let's just go with one person for purposes of this conversation. So you have one person who needs to review a hell of a lot more information, but they don't have the time and they don't have the resources. So their processes for finding the right candidate for any kind of a position is obviously, the processes have diluted in quality because they need to skim through documentation and you basically need to catch their attention. So this whole conversation we're having this morning isn't entirely based on a CV. It's actually looking at the job, specification from your perspective. And this is where we move here. Sitting in the room at the moment are obviously skilled candidates. That's what we call you. So you've been in the job market for a while. You, in all likelihood, already have a degree. You are, you're probably employed. You are in a senior position. We had a look at the statistics of the people in the room. It's all busy people in their work environment. So what this is saying is that you don't have the same privileges of a young student or an unemployed individual who can just review everything on all of the platforms and apply to 100,000 jobs. And more than that, because you are a skilled individual, in all likelihood, what you're doing is you are at a place where you're employed, where you either want to, move, you want to be promoted to the next position, perhaps you want to move to a senior leadership position, or, in some instances, and Lizanne and I are living proof of that, you want to pivot from your old career into a brand new career. But again, you still don't have time for this. You know, to add to all of this, you're all pursuing your PG dips and your MPhils and your MBAs and so on and so forth. So this is where it gets tricky for a candidate like yourself who is using your studies to sort of move in whatever direction you're trying to move, but you've got all of this information out there. So how are you interpreting what's going on in the job market or even in your own business in terms of a job specification? So what we're saying to you is you don't have time for all of this, and that in order to deconstruct the process and simplify the process, in order to save you time, you need to be looking at this from a different perspective. So basically what happens is you're looking at it from a boss perspective of the boss factor, and you're looking at it from a challenge and competitive factor. So this is actually three parts of it. But the first part is qualifications, and everyone sitting in this room is most likely qualified, even if it's not by, you know, virtue of a degree. It could be that you are running your own business, you're an entrepreneur, but you already have those skills. So you're not looking at that. So then you're looking at the boss factor and the competitive factor. I think I'm just going to stick with competitive because it's a little bit easier to explain. So what this says then, so now the job spec is where you're looking at the boss factor. So now the boss factor essentially means you've got a job, you're in a senior position, you don't necessarily have to move, you might be wanting to move, but you've also been in that particular job for enough time, or you've been just employed in general for enough years that you know, if you're making a move, it's got to be a quality move. Okay, so you're not just moving for the sake of moving. Again, you're not an, you know, we assume an unemployed individual or a young graduate, you know, just coming out of their undergrad degree, for example. So what we're aiming to show you here is basically good and bad things to look for in a job specification. So this entire conversation is just based on the boss factor. We'll get to the competitive factor now. So, and then again, more information, all of these little extracts that you guys are seeing on your screen, these are all directly extracted off various platforms of job specifications. So, you know, they always do the introduction and so on and so forth, but the skills and the requirements are what your eyes naturally go to, because you need to figure out whether this is a position that you should even bother applying to. It's really easy when it's a beautiful job specification that is clearly defined. And that really shouldn't be the conversation entirely, because, you know, what we need to focus on is looking for the bad ones. Right? So this is one that I found, and well, these are two that I found, which are, they've got perfect clarity, the descriptions of the roles and the responsibilities, the formatting, the structure, the level of detail. It's all fantastic. And you can see my little thing down here. This speaks to the actual culture of the organization or the company that you're trying to work at or that you're looking at. So if you have these skills, because we've already said you've got the skills, you've got the qualifications, and you look at this is more likely to tell you that this company, they have clear lines of communication, that, you know, the top level speaks to the bottom level and horizontally and so on and so forth, because the right information has been relayed to the human resource manager, you know, to say, listen, this is the kind of candidate that we're looking for. So this is the best case scenario, right? And then we start working towards the worst case scenarios.
So Priya, just before you kick off the slide, perhaps
Sure.
I can just give some answers from the chat. So we asked them, you know, what annoys you about job specs and the job search process in general. So Isaac has said, what can be annoying is that when there's very little stated outputs required by the candidate. And then also Ezra has mentioned, and I mean, Isaac and Ezra and anybody else, you feel free to unmute your mics and, you know, give us your comment yourselves. But Ezra says as well that they seem to be drafted for a specific person, even though you as the one applying, you know what the job entails, but they're looking for a specific candidate. And then also locating a potential job, trying to get in touch with the job poster to then clarify the specification because it's not clear enough. Yeah, so that I found interesting, and also, yeah, speaks to what you just mentioned about a good job spec.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's no arguing. I mean, it's infuriating, and I actually have sympathy because that's exactly what I had to deal with before I joined Gradlinc. You know, so you look at this job spec and you're like, it's telling me nothing. It's unclear. Who am I contacting? What do you mean by all of these words? So that's why I said, like, it's great when someone gets it right, because communication works within a company. And you look at a job spec and you go, well, I am your perfect fit, and I'm going to make you know that I am your perfect fit, which, you know, is the competitive factor of this whole thing. But unfortunately, in the environment that we're living in, and this is also quite specific to South Africa with everything that's going on, you know, in our country, again, with specifically our energy crisis, I would say, and in our experience with Gradlinc and the work that we do, it's probably, you know, closer to 7 out of 10 job specs that you look at and you go, oh, I actually know what they want. This is why I wanted to focus a little bit, excuse me. This is why I wanted to focus a little bit more on all of the bad things, you know, that they do with job specifications. So before I move on, I just want to tell you guys something quickly on this one. Interestingly enough, you cannot assume as a candidate in the market, for whatever reason, that big companies have good job specs because they might have a bigger department. Because this one with the 13 points was actually taken from a very, very small company that I happened to find, and I liked their job specs, so I added it to the presentation. But then again, you know, this one down here, this one did come from a big company. Okay. Then this one, this one infuriated me, and this one came from the big company. Okay. There's a myriad of problems that's going on over here. I just want to I got my little notes over here. So the clarity in the description, you guys can see immediately. Now you've got to, I don't know, smell what they want from you. You know, essentially, it's you've got to have a candidate. They've got to have well-rounded knowledge. There's absolutely no formatting. It just sort of, it speaks to so many things. It speaks to their lack of potential professionalism and their organizational abilities. Like, what kind of structures do they have in place? So if, you know, when I looked at this, specifically from a Gradlinc perspective, I was telling myself, but this is nothing. This is telling me that they're not actually going to care about the candidate that they're hiring, right? So then that tells me that there's a lack of consideration for the candidate experience. Like, how are you going to work within a company? And, you know, I've mentioned to you that this actually didn't come from like a small company. How are you going to be viewed as a candidate? And these are the things. With the job specification, it's no longer a structured black and white scenario where you look at it and you go, I'm just going to slide into it. It's a very subjective sort of, you know, viewing that you have to look at. And then there's just, you know, there's this ambiguity of well-rounded knowledge of service that just says that that HR person is inundated with work and tasks and desperately needs somebody else in that department. And then again, that just says there's lack of standardized processes, the communications channels, that's, you know, it's not going to happen. And like I said to you, I didn't edit this at all. I found this on LinkedIn, to be very, very honest. I mean, that's a typo, you know, that's again, speaking to an exhausted organization that's slowly starting to perhaps not care too much, you know. And then there's the subjectivity. This is actually very important, and this is very important for candidates like yourself, because again, I keep saying this, but I'll say it one more time. You've already got jobs, okay? You're in good jobs. If you're here, you're maybe thinking about changing or upskilling or, you know, moving into a higher position. If you're seeing a job spec that says incumbent, you know, they're not even personally addressing you, then that's a big red flag, and you really, really need to watch out for things like that. There's just it's almost like a lack of emphasis on any kind of, I don't know, personalization or personable approach within a company. You know, it's the little things that you spot in these job specifications that you need to pay attention to, because you can look at the qualifications and say, yeah, okay, I know how to, I learned how to the software language C++. So you've got that skill. That's not the point of this. Now you're looking at the company, right? Okay, oh, and this one infuriated me when I found this on the internet for so many reasons. I mean, I've listed some of them here. So the formatting and the structure of this is just, it's absolutely awful. The technical language, it's not bad, but it's how it's structured that I think it annoys me the most. But it's also, you know, when you're writing like this, so there's this, I spoke to Lizanne about this at some point, and I had a giggle, and I told her there's a strong possibility that whoever wrote this possibly, I don't know, used ChatGPT and then just copy pasted it and put it on LinkedIn. So that's my theory, but that's, you know, neither here nor there. But, you know, if you look at this, it even speaks to the possibility that you're going to get micromanaged, because there's just, it's too much. There's detail, you know, that's absolutely unnecessary. And this was just one extract to tell you guys what was going on with this. This was 3 pages of a Word document of just bullet points listed, right? And then could you even see that these were actually titles? You know, I mean, the person that did this doesn't care. And that doesn't speak to the individual, that speaks to the organization. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. Okay. And then there's the big one.
Before you move on, can I jump in there quickly? Yeah, with the previous slide, I'm looking at Ezra's question, or just the irritation about a job spec saying that it looks like it's written for a very specific person. So there's generally 3 ways of writing a job spec. A, it is based on a very well-structured organization, and everybody's roles are very clearly stipulated. That's usually, it's a good place to start, but you know you're getting into an organization that has systems in place. So if you like to come up with new ideas, that's often not the place to go, because everything is running very smoothly. Then you write a job spec for a person that just left, and you don't actually know what he did. So you basically get him to help you write the job spec to understand what needs to go in here. So that's probably a lot of the times what you see. It looks like it's for a specific person, and there's a little bit of ambiguity around it. So they don't have any other way of putting it. So they base it on a persona, and hopefully you fit into that. But if you deviate a little bit from that, they should be quite lenient to it. It's just because they base it on someone's job. Maybe they did more than one person's job in one, and now they combine that into one job title. And then the third one is that they don't actually know what they want this person to do. So they keep it as vague as possible, so that you don't get to go back later and say, oh, but what you're asking me now is not actually in my job specs. But that's the majority of the time how they write job specs. So if you keep it in mind, I mean, I think when I appointed Priya, the job spec was more vague than it was structured, because we're in a startup. But when we had the conversation in the interview, she could ask me every single question about how does it work, who are the people I will be working for or with, how does the structure look, what is the culture like. But I couldn't give her a better understanding of the job specs, because I also didn't know what her job spec would look like. So there's always a good and a bad side to the job specs that you see, whether it's vague or very descriptive. Just what I wanted to add it in there.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, Lizanne, that also speaks to, you know, what we've been saying at Gradlinc, that, you know, these you have to have sympathy for the HR manager. You know, there's so much work, and then suddenly someone isn't in the position, or the position has just been created and they need to fill, and they don't know what they're doing, and, you know, so on and so forth. So they try to put something together, but unfortunately, the perspective. And actually, thank you for mentioning that, because I meant to mention it earlier on. The perspective of the person that's actually viewing the job specification is that, you know, it's been written for somebody else. They're clearly looking for someone, and then it's infuriating, and then you don't even apply for it. But, you know, that's the view of the candidate, but the view of the HR manager is that might not even know what it is that they're looking for, or they're trying to replace a specific person. I 100% agree. Where is that? Okay, cool. So this is the big one, right? And this just opens up a lot of questions. Like, do you like what? Like, how do you feel about this? So they put the, you know, should it be compulsory? Is it mandatory? Like that they put the CV, your salary in, and if they don't, what does it speak to the company? And you know, all kinds of things. So most of the time, especially with the kind of jobs that you guys would be applying for, the kind of senior positions you want to be promoted to, they would indicate, okay, this is what you're going to be earning. But in a situation where you're looking at a job spec and there is no salary indicated, it could mean that it's going to be a low salary, or there might be budget constraints, which I've indicated here. And it puts you in a very awkward situation, because it's a fact that you don't bring up how much they're willing to pay you in the interview if you get into the interview process. So again, as candidates who don't necessarily have all of the time, that ends up being a situation where you know, you might have to go through an interview process, like 2 or 3 interviews. I mean, that happened to me also. And you still don't know what they're possibly putting on the table. We found, working with students and graduates, so that they've indicated to us that they won't even look at a job spec if they don't indicate the salary. But then if you go for a slightly older generation, like the millennials, they'll say, well, we don't anticipate that they will put the salary on, and if they like the job, they will simply apply for the job, right? So I can't give you a hard and fast answer that it's right or it's wrong. It's entirely up to you. It's subjective. I mean, people pay more attention, or candidates pay more attention for you, those of you in management roles. They will pay more attention if you're upfront and just say, listen, these are your responsibilities, and you list them properly, and this is what you're going to earn for doing this. You're probably also going to get a better quality of candidates.
Can I come in again?
Go for it.
I want to add some. I found an article, I think it was last year. I know you guys are not Gen Zs, but they spoke to a couple of students who said they literally will not apply for a job if there's not a salary indication. And from a recruitment perspective, I absolutely get that, because I don't understand. I know there might be many reasons, but from a personal point of view, like as a person, I don't understand why you don't want to tell me what I would be earning. Surely I am basing my decision whether I want to apply for this job based on the benefits that I get out of it. Do my skills fit the job? Do I get a good financial stability out of this job? Because, you know, yes, I would like to job because maybe have a job because I like my work, but maybe I need to support my family as well. And you are putting me through a process of 2-3 interviews, and you don't have, I mean, I'm going to put it out there, you don't have the decency to tell me what will I get in return, yet you have the audacity to give me a list of 2-3 pages of what I'm supposed to be doing for you. The job market is changing, and it's a problem for recruiters to get to the point where they realize that the power, even though we've got a massive unemployment rate in South Africa, the power is shifting to candidates more so than it was in the past. Because although there's a lot of people wanting this job, people are becoming much more, I wouldn't say picky, but they're becoming much more like they take a stand to say, listen, if you are not going to treat me as a decent human being in the process of hiring me, then how are you going to treat me if I'm actually employed by you? So when we onboard employers on Gradlinc, we have the option that they don't have to disclose their salary, but we really try and prompt them to disclose it, because it's just a fair trade-off to say, this is what I want, but this is what I will be giving you for it. And my personal experience as a nurse, whenever there was a nursing job posted anywhere, a nursing salary will never be disclosed, maybe in management, but nothing lower than management, because the salaries are very low. They're not good. So if you are ashamed to put the salary out there, then why do you have all these demands? I mean, there's a little bit of a personal sharing in there, but I felt that it's so applicable to more and more students asking us, but what is the salary for this? Like, I want to do this, I want to have the experience, but I've got a family back home that is relying on me, and I don't know what I'm applying for. And it's a mindset that we have to get into, that it's just a fair and transparent process. to tell people, listen, this is what you're going to be earning. Market related means nothing.
I mean, that.
Yeah, no, Lizanne, I just want to bring up two comments that were made while you were talking. Claire says the worst is when you start a job, then you have to write your own job spec and your own KPIs. And Ezra also mentions that, you know, perhaps there should just be a way to clarify things on a job spec. And I want to know from you guys, with your clients at Gradlinc, you know, what is the thinking behind making that channel available for candidates to actually ask questions? Because I know that that is quite a bit of a pet peeve as well with candidates. You know, I don't get feedback from the recruiter. There's no one actually answering me, which I think is also an indication that maybe, well, you should reconsider applying with this company because they're not very attentive on these channels. But what is your experience? You know, are recruiters saying that they have time for this feedback, or is it that they believe that the spec they're putting out there is actually the best they could do, and that is what they go off of?
I'll take this one, Priya. So
Sure.
I am talking about a bit of a process at the end of the presentation, so I will get back to specifically that part of Ezra's question. For Gradlinc, what we've done is there's a messaging system in place. So once someone has applied and the recruiter wants to contact them, then there's an option to share files or portfolios or links or whatever. So it's an easy way to contact them. It doesn't go via email. A lot of these platforms work via email, so you're hoping that they do find the email. You can message directly. But I think it's also because of the amount of applicants sometimes that you have to deal with as an HR manager, they like to put up that barrier, because if they open the floodgates, then they will be inundated with questions and emails and messages. And very often the person posting the job is not the final decision maker. So he's trying to protect himself by saying, well, you know what, this is a job spec. This is the normal answers that I would give because this is the questions I expect. But now you want more details about the job itself. And now you need to go to the person who's actually going to be doing the hiring. And there's often a very big disconnect there as well. So I don't think it's an easy fix. What we've tried to do with Gradlinc is just to make the messaging much more easier and to do the shortlisting in such a way that the recruiter can easily filter out the irrelevant applicants. Because if you don't have to deal with all the irrelevant applicants who you said you must have a BCom degree, but someone with no degree applies. If I can filter out all of them, I'm much more inclined to engage with the relevant applicants with a back and forth and say, hey, I saw your CV and I saw you had a question. Maybe we jump on Zoom, or maybe I can answer you via message. So we try to make it easier for the HR managers to actually encourage them then to engage with the potential candidates that are having relevant skills, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the more refined a process is, the more the individual dealing with the process has time to deal with what they need to, which means that the process becomes less diluted, it becomes more concentrated, so there's more quality and there's more value. So essentially that's what it is. And as candidates looking for jobs, it's infuriating, but you have to bear in mind, again, the processes that are happening in the back end. That's really important. Lizanne, I also just want to touch on what you were saying. You know, there's candidates out there, they've got families to support and lives to live. And then just to get back to this, then you have a situation where a potential employer or a company has the audacity to not put this, you know, the salary onto the job spec, because now you're looking at the thing and you like the thing and you want to apply, but then, you know, you're wasting your time. That obviously also speaks to the whole 80-20 principle, you know, of a job. Like the salary is in the 80 part, you know, of the of how you view your job, the good things of the job. So, you know, management and recruiters and HR individuals need to be aware of this, that it doesn't fall part of the 20, it falls part of the 80. So I scoured LinkedIn and I found 3 little job specs that actually indicated salaries to give you an idea of what's, you know, going on there. And you spoke about a personal experience with nursing. You know, if I may, this one, this immediately told me that this was a law firm because of the word from. Because it's sort of like, maybe you'll earn this depending on how many hours you're willing to put into the firm. This is sloppy. There's this, all three of this. It's anything like what? You can earn up to 300,000 per year dependent on experience. It says nothing. You know, I'm going to tell myself I've got an LLB and an MBA. I'm putting myself 300,000. You know, who are you to tell me dependent on experience I go to 260? And then this is a pet peeve for me working in this industry now. You know, this looks like 35 Rand to 45,000. Obviously, that's not their indication. And I am pedantic by nature, but it shows a lack of time or interest in the candidate and in the process. And then this one, I don't know, this sounded like you've gone to the shops because you want to buy something and something's on special and they go, but it's selling from this price. And then, you know, it's definitely not that you're going to be paying that much money. You're going to be paying essentially more, except in this scenario, it's the reverse. So, you know, if you as candidates see this on a job spec, just please be wary that this also speaks again to the organizational culture of the place that you're looking at for possibly moving into a new job. All right, so we spoke about the whole boss factor, put a lot of emphasis on the fact that you need to think about the company. It's absolutely important. We live in a world right now where self-care and, you know, all of that, it's important, mental health and so on and so forth. The jokes that you see all of the time and all the memes going, oh, but my job is awful and terrible and I don't want to be there 2 minutes into my day. You don't need to be in that environment, and especially you guys, because you're upskilling yourself with the degrees that you're doing. So that's the boss factor. And then at the beginning of all of this, I also said that there's the challenge and the competitive factor. So I'm just going to drop a link for you guys just now to a document that we actually decided we were going to share with you guys to help you out with this. And this is the competitive factor. Okay, so it's terminology essentially. So now what's happened? We've said that you've got the skills, you've looked at a company, you like the company, you like the job specification, you've decided that you could work there, you wouldn't mind that promotion or whatever, you know, whatever your personal circumstances are. Now you need to actually get that position. And considering where you are as qualified candidates or skilled candidates, to put this as, you know, bluntly, it's almost a manipulation process, okay? But it's not manipulation in an ugly sense. Basically, what I'm saying is you need to present yourself well. So this isn't just in your CV. So we're still talking about the job spec, okay? If a job specification is using specific language, you need to tweak your CV for that application to use that particular language. And the reason for that is most companies, or at least larger companies, use software to sift through your documentation, your CVs. And if they pick up these words, you go to the top of the pile, okay? So if you are very good at evaluating situations and deducing the truth, that's great, okay? But please put it that you're a critical thinker in your documentation, so that's already pushing you to the top. And then if you have now gone through this entire process and you get to the interview stage of this whole thing, then you need to reuse those particular words, because again, remember, it's a tired individual with very, very little time, and you're probably going to be one of like 15 candidates that they're interviewing, and they're going to be listening out for these key words, and that is your competitive factor. That's your challenge factor. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. There's a hell of a lot of words that you can use, and we're going to give you access to the whole document at some stage. But I think my bit of this is pretty much complete, so I'm open to some questions now, or if Lizanne, you want to maybe, I think perhaps maybe continue, and then we can take some questions at the end.
Left, and then we can probably take on the last couple of questions. This is a practical slide, and it also speaks to Ezra's question earlier. what is the process? So we can't enforce any processes on recruiters, but what we can do is recommend to them when they sign up to Gradlinc how to do a proper recruitment process to make the experience pleasant for candidates as well. But from your side, if you are now applying to someone or for a job that does not have a very good job description, or you're very unclear, but you happen to like what you see, but now you're in the interview, how do you further understand what is going on with this job and what does it entail? So that's the very last question I'm going to be answered there. But before we get there, I just want to run through a couple of things that you can keep in mind. So the criteria, and this is from an HR manager's perspective, and actually yours as well, but the criteria is important. Very often, and I've mentioned it before, and if they have an applicant tracking system like Priya mentioned, then it's a robot that will sift through the CV. So very often the first line of screening is not necessarily the person that will be employing you. So if you don't meet criteria, they will boot your CV out. So if it's an automated applicant tracking system, that's automated. If it's a person, they have certain tick boxes. So if they say these are essential requirements, or this is essential criteria, make sure that you meet at least 80% of the criteria. You don't have to always meet 100%, but if you meet only 50%, you know that you're going to waste their time, and you probably are going to waste your own time writing a cover letter and applying for this job. Make sure what this criteria is. There's a certain criteria that people often they not negotiate on much. One of that is BEE candidates. You are wasting your time, and then your CV will be booted immediately if they say that they prefer BEE candidates. Find something else that you're better suited for. This is a criteria that they will not negotiate or budge on. Qualifications. If they say science or related field, you can maybe have a little bit of leniency. But if they say that you have to have a PhD in something, applying with a master's degree is not going to get you very far unless they say somewhere lower, if you are in the process of doing a PhD, then they might consider it. But you are wasting their time, and you're making their work more, and you're making your work more if you're applying, if you don't fit the criteria. So just look at the criteria. I think what a lot of people do is they find a job, maybe the title looks similar to what they do. Maybe they read the info, the little job description, maybe one or two of the duties, and they think, yeah, I can do that, just apply. But they don't read the entire job spec. It's important to read the entire job spec. Then the second one is Google the company. Glassdoor is my favorite go-to. Not all of the companies are on there, but you find amazing information there. So a couple of years ago, I found this job on LinkedIn that looked great. It was a company in the US, and I think it was about 3 million rand a year. And I thought, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. The job spec looked great. Everything about this company looked actually really nice. I didn't see any red flags in the job spec. I found them on Glassdoor, and the hair on the back of my neck rose when I was reading the comments there about everyone saying how there's no job security. Today you have a job, tomorrow they kick you out, and they don't even retrench you, they fire you because you're not reaching your KPIs, or there's some sales targets that you're not reaching. As part of this company's process, they install a tracker system on your computer that takes a screenshot every 5 minutes, and it tracks your keys and your browser history. And I mean, I don't want to work for a company that micromanages like that. I understand if you're global, there's certain things you have to have in place, but I nearly applied for that job, and it was so scary to read the reviews on Glassdoor. So do yourself a favor and just go and read if you can find something on this company. LinkedIn stalking. So a favorite thing that we tell students to do is to go and LinkedIn stalk the people working for this company. So if you find the company on LinkedIn, see if there's someone that is currently in the role that you are applying for, see how long they've been there, go and see what they list as their duties on their LinkedIn profile. Or if you don't find someone that's in a similar position, just go and find the people. If you click on the company, you'll always be able to see the employees if they indicated on their LinkedIn profile. Go and see how long have they worked there. Have they been in the same company but in different positions? So you know there's a bit of a career possibility that you can grow there. See how many people they have in the company. See where they've worked before. See what is their experience before and what do they do now. So that will tell you how the company approaches people upskilling themselves, if they are open to people perhaps pivoting in their careers, or do they only have to work in a certain field and they stay in digital marketing throughout the entire company. Can you see that they're upskilling? Can you see that they're attending any events? So you can learn a little bit about the culture of the company. look at the people's profile pictures. Do they look happy on their LinkedIn profile pictures? It's not necessarily a picture that they took at the company, but if every single person in that company has a very staunch looking LinkedIn profile picture, I would think that, you know, it's a really happy place. Look at all these people. They look so serious. I want to work in a place with people that are more happy or more friendly. So it's a little bit of background checking just on the company that they won't necessarily tell you, that you can just find on Google. 80-20 rule in the workplace. So 80-20 rule goes in many ways. In many instances, it's applicable. In the workplace, remember, if you look at a job spec, you will always have about 20% of the job that you currently do or that you will be doing that you won't enjoy. So if you look at a job spec, do a little bit of calculation in your mind. And if you have to put a calculation on it, say, how much of this job spec do I really like? And the parts that I don't like, how much does it weigh? If you feel like, oh my word, this is like 50% of what this job spec says, I really don't like, you know that the 80-20 rule is not going to be in your favor. You're most likely not going to stay there for very long. It's just a nice way to apply it. And then Priya, if you can click onto the next slide, if you now in the interview.
Sorry, if I could interrupt you there for a second.
Sure.
I was also just thinking when you were talking about criteria, Google's a company that's important. LinkedIn stalking is absolutely brilliant. But you guys also have to remember your network where you are right now at Stellenbosch Business School. So like, you know, Lizanne and I did a pivot. I'll speak about my pivot. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And what I did first is listen to all of my classmates. And they worked for some impressive companies, and they would, you know, it was literally during breaks, you're networking, someone's going, oh, you know, my manager did this and that. So you need to pay attention to that. That is the kind of research that you can also apply if you're looking to move from one thing to another. I will move on.
Sure, thank you. Okay, and then this is the last one. So if you're now in the interview and you're trying to understand a little bit more about this job description, and I've been in an interview like this before, and it really, I didn't get all my answers, but it did help to make it a little bit easy to understand. So these are the go-to questions that we've either also received from people or personal experience, or that we've found in recruitment guidelines that's worked well before, because this gives you an understanding from the person sitting in front of you, how they describe this role. So the job description and what they tell you is very often not the same thing. So for instance, if I just go to the very last question, can you describe the ideal candidate for this role? What they tell you in that interview is way more important than, or if you can get them over the phone to do this before an interview, perhaps, or an email. This is way more important than the actual job description. The job description is something that they had to put out some way to get people to apply. What they tell you in that moment, that is the person that they want, what they want there. And if they say things like, I want this person to be a team player, and this person needs to be willing to travel, or this person needs to be very outgoing, then you already have an idea of, okay, so it's going to be traveling involved. I need to do maybe a lot of networking, maybe a lot of events, because I need to talk to people. It gives you an idea, whereas in the job description, it might have said something completely different. Ask them, can you describe a typical day in this role? That will also tell you how well they understand this role. So tell me, someone in this position, what will they do on a typical day? And let them take you through it. That gives you 100% better understanding than a job description saying this incumbent should be doing A, B, or C. What challenges would someone face in this role? I think this is one of the best questions I've gotten so far, because it puts me in a position as a recruiter to say, I now need to disclose something of my company that might put this applicant off for not applying. So that shifts the power immediately to you as a candidate to say, okay, so I'm very interested in this position. What challenges do you foresee for someone here? And if they say to you, no, there will be no challenges, I mean, that's a red flag. Every job has challenges. But they can perhaps tell you, listen, the challenges here is maybe this question, when Priya asked, it would be, it's a startup environment. So there's a lot of uncertainty in Gradlinc because we are not PwC, who's got, decades behind us. We've got all the structures behind us. It's a startup. So the challenges you would face is uncertainty of figuring out the strategy and the next step, and working with a little bit more of a vague job description, perhaps. But immediately for you personally, it will tell you, do I like what I hear, or is this something that I don't like? Who will this person report to? This is not asking will you be my manager? Or, you know, it's not any question that to show that you don't want to report to anyone, but you want to understand where do you fit in the system. Sometimes the job title says officer, manager, liaison, and you're like, okay, so is this a parallel move to where I'm at now? Do I move up? Do I move down? Asking this question, they will tell you, oh, you will be reporting to the team lead. So you know, okay, you're not going to be the team lead, or you will be reporting to the COO, the CEO. So you immediately can gauge a little bit of the seniority of this role that's perhaps not possible from the job description alone. And then what team does this person belong to? So perhaps it is also a little bit of a vague description. Is this team part of the design team? Is it part of the admin team, executive management? Where do they fit in? And in addition to this is, who will my team members be? Then you can also understand, okay, I will be working in a team of 5 project managers with project coordinators that is in each team. Or perhaps I'm part of a project coordinator team and we are 10 people in the team. But it helps you understand what is the organogram, what is the hierarchy, what is the structure of the company, and it helps you after the interview, if they should come back for a second round, that it puts you in a position to say, yes, I liked what I heard the first time, I want to continue. Or perhaps say, you know what, thank you for the opportunity, but I will not be continuing with this process, because you absolutely have that power if it doesn't feel like a good fit. This is you determining the fit for this role. Priya, I'm at the end of it. I want to share the link. If you want to share something else, I'm going to share a link in this chat.
Oh, okay. I was going to do that, but go for it.
Okay, now I've had it ready here. So we've drafted a CV guide, and it's a personal brand guide that you can download. It will open as a PDF. It's a long document, and it's to use wherever you are in the process of either drafting a new CV, getting ready for a job interview, perhaps being an HR manager and understanding a little bit more of the side of candidates. But you can go through this document, decide what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and how do you start building your personal brand. We've put it together. Share it with anyone that you think might find it really useful. It's just helping you get started if you don't really know where to start in the process where you're now, either in the MBA, ready to pivot. It helped me a lot to have some sort of guide when I started again and not have a very bad looking CV in Word format. Please do it. Don't do it in Word format. Just keep it to PDF, and just to get going and have a professional looking CV to start my new career with. Priya, that is all from my side. Thank you.
That's pretty much everything from my side. So I'm going to stop sharing. And if anyone has any questions, now is the time.
Yeah, thank you, Lizanne and Priya. Questions will come in on the chat, but please feel free to unmute yourselves, put on your video if you'd like to, and answer the question and pose your questions live. I'll stop the recording now because we won't include the question section in the recording. I just want to put some attention on the feedback form. Your feedback is very important on events like this because it helps us improve the next one and helps us also to know, what else do you want to hear about. So please answer the feedback survey. You can win an amazing personal leadership guide and a Stellenbosch University gift pack. And of course, the link to the CV and personal brand guide has also been posted there. So that the feedback form will close this evening. So by the end of today, the feedback form will be closed. So you need to please submit your feedback today. I will send it to you via email as well as the recording. So yeah, Ezra's got a question in the chat if you want to address that.